I cannot wait to become a National Registry state.
That's just stupid.
Hey Terry, there's like a bill that's been introduced in North Carolina again, and it's making its rounds on social media. It's uh, it's kind of chaotic times.
When you said bill, I was hoping you meant like the bill for dinner, like we were at a Waffle House.
Well, here's what I know. I know Terrence Shahid doesn't even look at the bill that we get at Waffle House because
Thank you, Educate.
so he doesn't really care about that.
But yeah, I may have seen some things in the last couple of days about this, maybe a hearing or two about it, and uh, we've been able to have some conversations with some folks, but I think it's time for you and I. We've talked a little bit on the phone. You and I had to have a conversation, and maybe we're able to do a little bit of education and spread the word a little bit on this.
Well, we hadn't got into the minutia, and I had said, why don't we just let's stick a camera in front of us and let's have this talk from a perspective of largely local government guy that understands it from one lens, wink,
Mhm.
and then an education person, myself, community college, and how that looks from
We're with we're with the community college. We're looking for the helicopter.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I know I see a lot of my friends. I've talked to a lot of my associates. I know you've talked to yours, and they have varying different opinions on this. And for those that are just in the dark, first of all, what in the world? Why are you in the dark?
I don't
Uh,
know how. I don't know how.
why are
They're
you in
not
the
on
dark?
social media. They're not on. I don't know where they are, but they're not following this.
Correct.
So
So that just I mean so what just to bring it up to speed so we look back on it, we're talking about House Bill 675, and this is the EMT personnel credentialing modifications, and to take a bill and just trim it down, and you can fill in any gaps, but the way I get it is make National Registry certification the thing in North Carolina. That's basically the cut and dry of it, and there's a lot of details in the middle, but at the end of the day, that's what we're talking about. Is that how you read it?
that's how I read it. Yeah,
Yeah, and so you're National Registry, right?
correct. And
Yeah, me
and I think
too.
about a year apart, we got our registry.
That wouldn't surprise me, actually. Wait a minute, what year did you get your National Registry?
I don't. I got a 20-year letter a couple like within the last year. So
Yeah,
yeah, like
okay.
2.5 years ago.
Yeah. So I know I got mine in 99. So
Oh, okay, that's
uh
weird.
but so the little bit of history, because a lot of folks I do talk to have not, they have been in EMS maybe they're post 9/11 people,
Yeah.
and so the whole thing that drove me to even go test National Registry is I went through the paramedic program at Rockingham Community College, and it was billed as, hey, this is an extra gold standard thing that you can do, like, beyond that. It's not required, but you can just go and just prove yourself to a different level. Now, at that time, also in North Carolina, at that time, we had the skill stations, 6 of them. But National Registry had their skill stations that were supposedly tougher, harder criteria, whatnot. And then you had the written exam. And so I achieved my National Registry through that, just for the whole purpose of another challenge of doing something, and have maintained that certification ever since or whatnot. Do you have a different story?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Some of it was portability. I wasn't sure. Being I guess I was 20 some years old, 24 years old or something like that, 25, 23, unsure where life was going to take me. And at the time, unsure what that reciprocity thing looked like, because you were exactly right, to where you were in that education, that college world, and in the local government, that stuff was a little bit more mysterious. And I feel like I was looking at an associate's degree program somewhere, and that may have been one of the requirements, is you had to be a registry. But similar ish, type of thing, that hey, this is a different some would say higher standard. And then at the time, the North Carolina patch, I'm going to draw some ire from some folks. I didn't think it was very eye catching, and that glitter patch was a little bit more eye catching.
Yeah, I think it was actually a time that National Registry got away from the glitter patch and tried something else and was like, and I don't think it worked out, and he went back to the to that glitter patch if I remember correctly. But yeah, so it's a lot of that, you know. I had a friend of mine who used to say he'd get things for his me wall, you know, it's all about me. So, you know, that was really what it came down to. But over time, somewhere along the way, National Registry grew. I'm going to speak in complete generalities here, right? So it's not a on one side or the other type thing. It's more of a generality, and that is National Registry grew, and I'll try to make this as non-argumentative as I can. I'm going to say gained influence or helped influence one or the other with the national accrediting body of COAMPS. And the reason I can say that is because one holds a seat on the other. For the board of directors. I think the National Registry holds a seat on the board of COAMPS, and so they have influence and they collaborate. They make no secret about that they collaborate together. So the reason that's important to understand that the National Registry and COAMPS, I'm not going to say are in cahoots together so much as I'm going to say is they were collaborating together. That's their words, collaborating together to sort of unify and standardize nationally what paramedics would be. And maybe their long-term thing is everybody's driving this train, throwback to Terry, towards a tunnel of national licensure, right? Maybe that's where that's the purpose is. We've heard that come up a few times from our own office of EMS here in North Carolina. So I think it's we may be on that train as well, headed to that. So you've seen National Registry and COAMPS have this influence with each other to sort of standardize these things. And, you know, in I think 2013, you started seeing this whole, you got to graduate from a, you know, a nationally accredited program in order to test National Registry. You know, that spoke to the whole, you know, we're together, we're collaborating, we're doing these things. And, you know, and then just this past year or two, our own state office of EMS to require, you know, accreditation as a whole, um, not only for paramedic, but even went so far to take it a step further and say AEMT, where no other state had done that. So as National Registry has grown, it looks like to me from what I see, there are 48 states that have adopted National Registry to be the initial certification going in. There's only two states that don't, New York and North Carolina. The whys of that, not really sure about, so I can't debate that part. But what I'll say is that it looks like National Registry has gotten 48 other states to say, hey, recognize us as an initial credential coming in, whether you issue a state credential or not. And so I don't know if that was the setup for Representative Mark Pless to put in this bill, who I think is the sponsor, sole sponsor, I believe at this time, to put that in, and really push it. Now, lots of discussions take the eye off the ball. I'm gonna let you talk in just a minute, but here's the thing I have to always want to come back to. Let's not forget the question being asked, because it seems like a lot of people want to talk about the reasons why, who is, what they're after overall, maybe personally or professionally or whatever, but they're forgetting the key, you know, they're not focusing on the key question of, is this a good idea or a bad idea, and why not? We tend to go down these rabbit holes of, well, consider the source, or, you know, hey, this is an attack here or there or whatnot. So what's your thoughts on that, on any of the stuff I just added?
This is where I would start. I mean, there's so many shiny objects that I just want to chase with this. And one of them, I think right out the gate, is North Carolina is different. Have just spent a little bit of time with our friends that have the flag backwards, to the south. And I think Texas would be another one. You know, the original Jay Z, yeah, years ago, Joseph Zalkin had made some linkages for me to how North Carolina EMS was similar but different to EMS in Texas with some stuff. And I would say when I talk with folks that come into North Carolina from Virginia. It's a little bit different with some of their stuff with their shock trauma or their AEMT, I-99 or whatever. But especially you go to Pennsylvania, you go to Maryland, you go to there's a state you said earlier, New York. When you go to some of these other states, the practice restrictions are incredibly limited for those folks. What a paramedic can do in those areas, especially you go into those urban areas, is vastly different from what we do in North Carolina. And that for me is kind of one of my core things to where I say, while I like registry for things, and you talked about 48 states, and don't forget there are countries. I remember back when you and I got our critical care, our UMBC critical care, year and a half apart from each other. There was a gentleman in that class who worked in the Middle East as a paramedic, and he was doing something to where he had to get that critical care. And we asked about, well, does your country license you? Do they certify you? What does that look like in your country? And where he had said, no, in the Middle East, it's National Registry. So people will come to the States, get their registry and leave. But I think this is, to chase the rabbits. This for me is one of the first things. One of my first stops is I think EMS looks a little bit different in North Carolina, and so that for me is probably one of my concerns out the gate.
Well, and so I think one of the things that stands out to me as an educator, and I don't know that unless you're a program director having to navigate national accreditation, no one else knows that world. That you can be on the other side of it and watch it take place. You may be on an advisory committee. You may be an instructor in a program.
I
You
like
may
those places. That's my favorite place to be.
you may be an agency that participates in some of the surveys, but those individuals that have to go through the process with their partners from Office of EMS, your education team from Office of EMS, who are involved along every step of the way. Those are the folks that have a completely different lens that they look through on accreditation, right? So I think to speak for that group of people, and we're not talking about hundreds of people, we're talking about scores of people, as some of these folks have retired, moved on, decided I don't want to do it anymore. But there's some folks out there running programs, just to give shout out to them, Chip Muna, Angela McGill, Billy Langston up at Wake Tech, Walter, who's not with us this time
Not what
at College of the Albemarle. Belcher's doing good things up at Forsyth Tech, and I mean, I can just go on about these different names of people who are constantly working, in the accreditation models, or working through that process of accreditation. They see it differently than what the outcomes end up being. As an agency, they're going to see what does your community college produce and that we're going to hire. And from the community college level, it's like, what are we doing to checks and balances to get that? And if I'm not going to speak for anybody else, but I think if you start asking questions like, did accreditation create the same outcome for the colleges, your stakeholders would say, no, they did not. That did not change. The processes of doing that has changed. The measuring of it probably became equal, but what they produce at college A and what they could produce at college B, both accredited, could be vastly different to the
they
stakeholder.
are. They are very different.
So that being the case, I think it's a natural question when COAMP's mandation came, when it said thou shalt be accredited in the name of national standardization, thou shalt become accredited. And I think the swing at that, a baseball guy, the swing at that was to let's get these colleges in line. They're all over the place. I got one here, 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 here. If I nationally accredit them, I'm at least going to get them on this linear line, right? And I'm going to have them there. And that was that focus. But I think what you're seeing with this national registry question, get off of the person, get off of what they're doing, and look at the question. Is it not a natural question that if you say, hey, here's thou shalt be accredited so that we can standardize, isn't that a natural question to ask? Then why not national registry?
I think it is, but I think what is let's talk about the process. In the words of in the words of a buddy of mine, retiring as resident superior district court judge, the devil is in the details. And I think if you start to chase those details, a conversation that I participated in, I don't know, 8 years ago, 7 years ago, 10 years ago, something like that, was was talking about some of those educational institutions and some of the differences in those educational institutions. And hey, coamps, this begins to solve some of those issues. And I don't know if it has. The analogy I've been using is hey, we're building this house and we got a couple of walls on this house. It would just be natural to continue to build the house this way. But why are we fixing something that's not broken? Why are we going to create additional hurdles for folks? Because when I think about it, how many folks in the state of North Carolina, let's talk logistics. I know it's not sexy. I know my seventh best friend, he's not with us today. That's all he does is logistics. But if I'm going to host a national registry at X community college, that's kind of a labor intensive process, and that's a process where I'm bringing in somebody else. We got to bring somebody in, and they oversee that process. I why am I creating barriers? Why am I going to create barriers to getting folks on the street, whether it's for my EMS agency? And I think one of the things that we lose track of as well is what about the state park system? State park system has those EMTs, town or police departments, sheriff's departments, or volunteer fire departments. Why are we going to create barriers for our community?
So I would ask that, why wasn't that question asked when the mandation of accreditation come about? If
Uh,
if you're
should
going
have been,
to
should
if
have
you're
been,
going to use that, then
should have been.
why not
Yeah,
say, going accreditation is creating barriers as well. But here's the deal: can't go back and change that. That's the
yeah.
life we live with. So I don't think you can now argue
No.
creating barriers, because that was a $10,000 barrier. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, but the barrier for that is on and the barrier on is on an institution in that case. And I'm no fool when I say, hey, these are communities, and in some cases it's very difficult because when we talk accreditation, you've enlightened me for some of the things like the mannequins that you have to have, and some programs don't have that, or the equipment, or some of those pieces and things. And so I think there's some good to that, but that the cost, the brunt of that cost is being shared by a community college. And so it doesn't matter whether it's the smallest that offers EMS, because not all of them do. Then they're able to check that box and it gets passed on. But now we're talking about, is this my agency that's paying for this? Is this me? And I don't know. I don't. That for me is some of the differences.
I agree with that. I think if you start getting into the argument of why not National Registry, I think currently it's 60 some odd dollars to test for North Carolina. We've been told that number is going to go up to somewhere around 80, $81 at July 1. So we know that that's going to be an $80 venture. And just to give, an insight of what like the National Registry is, let me throw out their numbers for a second, because I do have them pulled up here. You're looking at, for EMT, that's to initial, apples to apples,
Yeah,
EMT
yeah.
exam for North Carolina, EMT exam for National Registry. North Carolina is going to be, 80, $81. National Registry is 104.
Okay.
Right now, if
Oh,
you recredential, it doesn't cost anything, but if you recredential National Registry, it's going to cost you as well.
so that was going to be, if we're talking apples to apples, that to me is one of the things is, and I guess if I'm a lawyer, if I'm a lawyer, I'm paying money to a bar association. If I am a realtor, we've got some realtor friends out there. You're paying that money to be a member of that association of realtors, and to keep that stuff alive. But that to me is one of those things is you're paying this money to registry. I don't even know how much it is. 35, 50, 50. What did
It's
you just say?
different for each level. Yeah, I've got it pulled up. let's see, it is well, effective October 1st of this year, it goes up to $29 for EMTs, $30 for AEMTs, and $37 for paramedics. And they do have late fees with that are $50. So, and it's 2 years versus a 4-year credential. Now, there to me, I get that part. I get it that a change is an expensive change. It's an expensive change because it's going to be an expense to do something. But that argument did not come in as expensive change when it was mandated to accredit everybody. So, and that was well, I ain't gonna say it was more expensive. And I'm not against the fact that happened. I'm just saying that when you open the door to
Yeah.
say we're going to be nationally accredited and it's going to cost this money, and it was a suck it up buttercup type thing. That's just the way it is. And I had to sit in front of many a president, many a dean, and say, that's just the way it is. That's the cost of doing EMS business. And if you don't like doing it, stop doing EMS programs. That's the cost of doing it. And we are expected to say that in defense of it, but we don't want to say that's the cost of being a paramedic and EMT is to say National Registry. We're not going to make that same argument. It seems like we're doing two different things.
We definitely are, and that to me is one of the pieces with this is, uh, yeah, and
Uh,
and I really don't like it.
Well, and so back in the old days, when I was still doing paramedic or EMS programming stuff under the old rules, it was very clear to us that the Office of EMS set the standard and the way things would be and stuff. And I personally liked that model because I knew that if we needed something, OEMS could just mandate it, and that's the way it would
Yes,
be without having to point to somebody else and say, well, they said so. That's what we gonna
and
do.
and so is it a fair question to ask? Did where did we lose our way? Because that to me is one of the pieces that, whether it's the credential now, and or the way that we're doing the education, we had that buy-in. Power is really the wrong word, but I felt responsiveness. And then we lose that responsiveness, and we're beholden to where's coamps? Where are they based out of? Kansas City, California? Where,
They don't
where
really have an office there. They're like they're remote everywhere they are. They probably do have a building that has their symbol on it somewhere, but I
yeah,
think everybody's located at home somewhere else.
just like I'm trying, what's the name of I'm coming up with a different city. The building, the National Registry, what's the name of their building or something or another?
Oh, it's got a name to build, and I didn't know that. All right.
Yeah, yeah, National Registry. That's I
Are
remember
they in
that from
Ohio?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Which Ohio?
That right there is enough just to end the bill right now. We don't need to go to
Correct.
Ohio.
Yeah, let's tie us to Ohio.
What
Sorry
is a
if you're
Buckeye? Do you,
uh I don't know.
um, so let's talk about there right there is a controversy and if this then this type thing. Here's some things I think universally everybody agrees with inside of the bill is that it could use some work being in how it's written. Like the not having a grandfather thing, I think is a no-go regardless. So I think that I hear that a lot is like mandating it by a certain time, what it would cost to get everybody to that. If you didn't graduate from an accredited program, then there's some task involved with what you have to do to become eligible for National Registry. And unless it's changed recently, by recently I mean in the last 6 months, doing a refresher just ain't gonna cut it. There's some other things you have to do with a clinical component. They were pretty clear about that. So that may have changed, and if that's the case, then okay, fine. But it's still some effort people would have to do. Say if you yourself wasn't, you know, uh, and you know what? Now that I've opened that door, how about that? How many folks out here are in senior level administration, right? That ain't that don't give me no national registry tests now. I mean, I'm in education. I'm good for probably an 80-ish on it, or if it's computer based and shut
Correct. You are.
but I mean, come on. If we're going to be real, you could ask some chief level officers out there to tell you that, hey, I was a paramedic. I am credentialed as a paramedic, but
Hold on, hold on. Well, I think the wording that I've heard before is don't confuse being credentialed with being competent.
that's true. Yeah, that's right. And so, I mean, that would affect them, and that's a whole different thing as well, right? So, you know, light at the end of the tunnel is, I don't know that it ever becomes to fruition, but it certainly has raised questions. And like I said, I think the questions are worth asking so that we can get some answers to go by. What is the vision? What is the vision of where we're going? Because if I remember a very clear vision that was put out by, and I'm just going to speak to the Office of EMS. At least I felt I understood their vision, and their vision was we are here and we are trying to get to licensure. There's a lot of stuff that we're going to do, and I'm paraphrasing this, okay?
Yeah,
There's a
yeah.
lot of stuff that we're going to do. Some of it you're going to like, some of it you're not going to like, but it's all in an effort to get to here. And we struggled on just about every pathway there was to get to something. And we landed at coamps. We landed at coamps at the end. And now that we've achieved that, if we're at now, what are we trying to do? Are we still shooting for licensure? And if so, what are we doing? Because I mean, I feel their vision is to improve the tests that they use to credential folks off of and improve that. And there's a lot of effort they put into and a lot of work they put into making that better. But is that still in an effort to try to get the licensure? And they may answer that question, but I'm just saying that there was a time that I felt I knew without question what the vision was. And if anything, when I heard the National Registry thing out, I chuckled at first when I saw the bill and was like, huh. And then I started saying, all right, let's take away all of the politics, let's take away the people, let's take away
Which
what
is
everybody else says.
not possible.
Now let's ask the question. Let's ask the
Not
question.
possible.
Why not
Hit,
National Registry? And then can you answer that question? And then that's when you get into the whole, well, money, this and non-grandfather clause, this. Okay. So that that's where the battle ends up happening. But unfortunately, in social media world, we spend a lot of time chasing down that personal rabbit, going down these holes. And you know, I don't know a lot of the history on XYZ of that thing, but and I
so
may
I think that's the question. To interrupt you and not care, is it to this signature phrase. All credits go to the prospective owners. Start with why. What is that why? Because the bill is a very scorched earth policy. Is the phrasing that I've heard some folks use, because for when it becomes effective, and you must be National Registry by what it 2030.
yeah.
And we don't even know. I feel like the data people don't have that capacity to answer the question. But the question that I would ask is, okay, what percent of providers in North Carolina even are registry? And then what percent of providers that are not registry, did they go through an accredited program or did not go through an accredited program? And then let's start backtracking that way, because I think this is more uphill. I think this is more uphill.
Um, I don't disagree with that. I think that data is actually out there. I think National Registry can tell you. Well, here's what the National Registry can tell you. Their data is going to tell you how many credentialed providers have a North Carolina residence. Um, that's as much as they can tell you because I did look that up. And it's like 10,000 EMTs in North Carolina, but we have more than 10,000 EMTs in North Carolina. So they're saying 10,000 are nationally registered. So, um, and there's some that are not, right? Or those numbers are way or bloated, right? And I don't know that. I mean, that's worth chasing to find out. Um, what when you say scorched earth, is that not though the way you're supposed to approach from the complete opposite of that? Is that not how you're supposed to approach your what I'm asking for? Is we ask for the world and hope for a small village. And the reverse of that would be I'm scorching the earth and hoping that I only burn this one little town.
I don't know. I look at it and say, so to toss that net. So let me just, before I even hit on that, because I pulled it up real quick. This is an odd odd episode where we're like Googling stuff to debate. So 11,223 paramedics in the state of North Carolina as of quarter 1 of 2025, 27,177 EMTs. I don't know. Is there a national registry for EMD? AEMT. I think those two look different, but I don't know. I remember a buddy of mine running for office. As he was leaving EMS and he was running for office, and one of his things was being able to sit down across the aisles and work together. And this is what I would say is looking at this. This just how am I going to work together? Because I just it's carrot and stick, but I'm feeling a lot of stick and not a lot of carrot right now. If you were driving and saying, "Hey, compact," if you were driving and saying, how does having national registry get me to licensure? Because I don't hear or see that in any of in any of that stuff. And
Right.
yeah,
No, and I say that. And that's why I say we got to talk about the things that everybody else is not talking about, just sort of get a hand on it. I think at the end of the day, my point of view, my personal point of view is at the end of the day, it's not gonna go anywhere. It's not gonna land anywhere. But for those purists out there, they're gonna want to answer the question, why not national registry? Now, if not that bill, could they write one better to get it? And why are we the one of only 2 states not doing it? Because we're better? Because if the answer is yes, we're better and we're different, which you led with, by the way, and I meant to come back to this. You led with North Carolina's different. I'm not disagreeing with you.
is this weird for the non-native North Carolinian to say this to the native North Carolinian? It
Well,
is
you're the
for
only
you.
one that can see it that way. I mean, you're not the only one, but being from the outside coming in, you see it that way. Of course, we're
Yeah,
different. Anybody in North Carolina just thinks we're North Carolina, like me.
yeah,
But
yeah.
to be outside of it and come in, you see that it's different. And I agree. But if we are so different, why do we do co-amps?
Well, so let me toss, since we're talking data and numbers, and I've got this pulled up, oems.nc.gov/interactive dash data slash nothing. Okay. So since we went to, what year did we go to coamps? What year did we start
Last
putting
year, I
some?
believe. I believe it was 24. I'm sure one of our listeners will correct us in the comments or whatever, but
They
it was
will.
20.
So yeah. So you broke up there for a second. So the recording it'll be like McYella. Um,
MC.
yeah,
Who
yeah. So
is
you.
McRen?
Oh yeah, yeah, McGren. Yeah, who's McGren? So if we, it's dangerous, folks. 1,284 instructor count by level. So that's quarter 1 of 2022, and then if we go to quarter 1 2025, 1,117. So I'm not sure what happened and why we have lost. What is that? 167. How did we lose 167 instructors in that time? But oh, if I go to our personnel count, yeah, hold on. Just Johnny, put your hand down. I'll call on you in a second. So how is it from quarter 1 2022? So I'm not really comparing apples to apples. Oh wait, yeah, I am. It was 2022. So 41,550 to 45,122. So I've had about a 10% loss ballpark in instructors, and I've had I don't know, what is that? 10%, 15% increase in my folks in credential. So when I have my North Carolina standard for my credential, I'm growing the number of providers. But when I have tied instructors to a national standard, and some of those folks that you name dropped earlier, we could have a good conversation. Probably should have a good conversation about pay compensation with instructors. I know 1-on-1 or 2-on-1, we've had some 3-on-1, we've had some good conversations with them. But it looks like that national standard has diminished the number of instructors out there. Just saying.
Well, and I can say that, I don't probably ask the question of are you a level one instructor more than I ask are you capable of teaching or have an interest in it. Getting someone to go to get their level one, they have to have a particular desire for it. And they're going to have to go, through the degree route to do it. And I don't think it was a good idea. In that particular case, I don't think it was a good idea because here's the thing. If you graduate and you have a degree, you're already ahead, you're already above. Like if you grad, like I go to school, I get my EMT and I get my paramedic and I got a degree when I do it before I even touch a truck, independent functioning. I'm already a leg up on the instructor level than my preceptor who may have went 2 nights a week and one Saturday a month and has been doing it for 10 years, don't have a degree, but they're teaching that person how to independently function, but by rule of how it is, can't be an instructor, can't be a level one instructor anyway, because they don't have an associate degree. So the person that I'm mentoring, that I'm teaching, who has a degree, has a leg up on me for that. And that doesn't make me want to go get my degree. That makes me bitter. That makes me, if I've been doing this for 10 years, it makes me feel like I'm forcing a degree. And that's where you get this, I'm not going to get one. And there's a lot of non-degreed people. I forgot who I was talking to the other day, and we were talking about, it seems like, and this is master's degree person talking to another master's degree person, that the more education and letters we put behind our name, the dumber sometimes we get. And I look in the mirror and I'm a dummy sometimes, but the people that taught me, I didn't look at the letters behind their name. It wasn't the letters behind their name that made impact on me.
I heard a fellow one time, and he was pretty smart, not well formally educated, talking about it was bull blank, more blank, and then PhD to him stood for post hole diggers, because he said you had about zero common sense that you wouldn't know what post hole diggers were. Here's this is what I would say is when we look at not giving up the ship. John, I don't know if you're familiar with the ships of leadership.
Never heard
Uh,
of it.
okay, sponsorship,
Sounds stolen.
probably.
Stolen valor.
Thank you for your service. Sponsorship, what are you sponsoring? And then here's another word for sponsorship. What are you advocating for? And so you're probably going to talk about something else for another couple of minutes, but that for me is one of the things that I would kind of drive home is there are people out there that may have missed that this is happening. And I don't know. Now, I'm not sure the I'm not sure not sure the information flow is happening as good as it could or it should be, and I don't want to call out any one individual, any one organization. But to a name I tossed out earlier, Joseph Zalkin, one of his things is I put this stuff on my Facebook to get that information out there and to stir the conversation and make people aware. And that might be one of the things is letting that sunshine in as disinfectant to see that this is happening. But what are people advocating for? Are they being aware? And one individual had said something or another to they had talked with their local representative, senator. I don't remember what it was. They had some concerns about this, and their local senator or whatever representative had said, "Hey, thanks for being involved. Hey, thanks for paying attention. Thanks for asking those really good questions." And that for me would be one of the things that are people really advocating? Are they Facebook keyboard warriors out there? Or are they having that conversation? Are they working with folks with that stewardship? Are they building those relationships and those partnerships?
That is them though advocating in their mind. In their mind, when they're on Facebook and they're on comments and stuff, in their mind, they are advocating. They're saying their 2 cents or whatever because now they have a voice. Now you're talking about a generation or two that lived through feeling like in the maybe 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever, that they didn't have a voice. Like it didn't matter what they thought because it was never, and now they have this platform that they feel like they talk on. So I don't want to generalize everybody, but it's very easy to get on there and talk and do those things. So I feel like if I make the effort to go in there and comment a paragraph or so, is that is me advocating. That is me saying something at that point. And it could be that we, as an industry, have done a poor job of teaching people how to advocate, what they're supposed to do. This is really, as an industry, our first public exposure to politics that directly affect EMS in North Carolina, mainstream, man. And it has two bills. That one first bill was the franchise thing, right? And now we got this one. There may be others because Representative Pless, was a paramedic, and and that's unique to us. He may be the very first paramedic that held that role, for all I know. I don't know. It's worth a chat GPT to find out, I guess. But the thing is this is our first exposure. So hopefully what we're taking away from it is, how do we communicate this? Or what are our avenues to do so? Because I know there are directors out there. Talked with one today, text message, about letters that they have written, and getting a response from the person or whatnot. So I know that's happening, and I think that is one way of doing it. That I'm an advocate. I would suggest one does: calling, talking, meeting. Certainly going to EMS on the Hill Day, or in Raleigh or Capitol, whatever they're calling it that week. To go then, that's certainly a time to make your face known and stuff, and know those reps. And I know you meet with your local representation where you're at, so I think that's a part that one has to do. I know we talk about it in our leadership academy, officer program in our leadership academy, but this is a front row seat where every person from the EMT on a transport truck all the way to the chief level sitting in an office somewhere is seeing it play out for them in social media work. So,
Well, I think here's another, for me, kind of final piece with this is, you can't just assume people know. And I continue to still hear that from folks. Hey, well, it should be common knowledge this, or common knowledge that. And when I was in Texas recently, heard a fire chief talking about one of the things that he does in his onboarding. And I'm a little bit nerdy when we're doing Officer One class. Hey, I want to talk about the budget. There's just a couple of us that love to talk about the budget. And this feller said that as part of his onboarding process, you join his agency, you get a 4-hour budget, lesson, learning about how that city does their budgeting, where the money comes from. And his statement was, you might have these folks that are at the table at the station, and they're like, hey, we're gonna get a couple of helicopters. I thought that was cute. And hey, we're gonna buy a fire department submarine. And he's like, where's all the money from this stuff coming from?
that sounds like
Um,
a Gaston thing right there. Well,
it,
hey,
yeah, what,
hey, Gaston, where's your submarine at? Yeah, that's
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 what
what I
they've
want to know. Yeah,
that's what they've got to pull with their
yeah.
tractor trailer.
Where's that tool at, Mark? Huh?
Yeah, yes. but but he ties it in and says, people don't really know about that stuff. And he made an interesting thing when we start to talk about this. And I started texting some of the people that in my network, Dalton in Edgecombe, some other folks that I texted, where he said, you just take it for granted that people know this. But if we talk about mental health issues with our staff, what percentage of that comes from home? What percentage of that comes from not having a balanced budget at home? And I don't know what school was like in Reedsville, but yeah, did they teach you to write checks when you were in elementary school, middle school? But nobody talked about, hey, how to file your taxes. Nobody told you how to do a balanced budget. And so that's one of the things that I would say. People maybe they just think they're advocating by being their Facebook warriors. But I don't know, if I go into the street and I start yelling, at some point people are going to be like, hey, is that crazy guy down the street? But it's just as effective as getting on Facebook, logging in, and yelling.
I don't disagree. I don't know that we come to any resolution here, but I feel like we've at least laid down a red carpet to open the door for invitation to have a conversation, and not forget about keeping an eye on the ball. Whether you feel passionately one way or the other about this, A lot of this, I think, ties down to where are we trying to take. It's hard for me to tell my kid, Johnny, how to play a particular position in baseball, which, by the way, I am not certified to teach, but will do everything I can to tell him how to do, without telling him what the purpose of it is to win the ball game. All these little plays that everybody does to win the ball game. And I think when everyone knows what the vision is, it makes it very easy for people to jump on board and say, well, that doesn't tie into where we're trying to go. And that doesn't tie into where we're trying to go. And if the vision is still licensure, that's all I'm saying. If the vision is still to be licensed, and we went down coamps for that purpose, I'm on board. I got it. Then we have to answer the question, why not National Registry, who also has that same purpose? And if they have convinced 48 other states, what's wrong with New York and North Carolina? I mean, as a question, I'm not saying I agree with it, because I don't, but I think that's where the question comes in my opinion on that.
So what I'm hearing from you is championship.
What?
Don't give up the ship.
Oh, right, that's stolen too. So is there anything else you want to share from Shark GPT?
Yeah, I think what we need to do is we need to have discourse, and to not just get mad and storm off, but be able to have civil discourse, to be able to have the debate, to have the questions. Some things I might be right in, some things you might be right in. At the end of the day, as a profession, we need to work together. We need to work within the bounds that our elected officials set for us, the things that they do, and our leaders are able to make happen for us. But I think right now, this is the time for civic discourse. This is the time to have that conversation, to be civil about it while we do it. And hey, nobody's won that argument by saying, hey, you're stupid. Let's seek to understand. I go back to that Simon Sinek. What is the why? Start with why.
Are you reading that book this week? Because you mentioned like 4 things that I remember from that book today. You listened to it like on the plane or something, didn't you? Okay.
Maybe.
Well, thank you for joining me on my show. I appreciate you being my special guest.
I think I've been on the show more than you have been. Well, thanks for joining me on my podcast.
Let's go count and see.